Hello and welcome to Newsroom. We're live from Islamabad and I'm Sharmeen Ali. Two soldiers have been martyred yesterday in a terrorist attack in North Waziristan. It's a very sad situation, and Pakistan is still fighting its war on terror, although a lot of gains have been made and the situation with terrorism in Pakistan has greatly improved. The attacks are a lot less, but unfortunately today we have lost Havaldar Sher Zaman and Sepoy Muhammad Jawad in a terrorist-related operation. And God bless their souls for protecting Pakistan and all our armed forces and soldiers who valiantly fight every day in order to make sure that we are free from terrorism. Also, Pakistan's Foreign Office has rejected Prime Minister Modi's recent statements, which were very aggressive and belligerent, and that stated that the Indian armed forces can make Pakistan bite the dust in 10 days, according to his words. Now, Pakistan's Foreign Office responded to that and asked the international community to be cognizant of Prime Minister Modi's belligerent words, because naturally these are not responsible statements coming from a head of state which is a nuclear armed country. So, a very serious matter indeed. Also, 2 polio workers have been killed as the team continues to come under attack. All the polio teams that are out in the field, they continue to be under attack from extremist groups, and this time a lady worker was also killed, and this attack was in Swabi. And we'll also be talking about a free rickshaw service being provided by a local man in Peshawar, Arab Shah, who takes young girls in his locality to and from school and to the madrasa for free. So these are some very good positive things happening in our country. We have these small everyday heroes doing their work. So we'll begin with the first segment today. We have with us Rana Athar Javed, who's a security expert, and we also have with us online Khurram Iqbal Sahab, who's an analyst. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us, and thank you for joining us online. We're going to be talking about the soldiers that were martyred during an operation in a terrorist hideout in North Waziristan. So Pakistan's gains in the war on terror are many. However, there's still some way to go, because as we're seeing, terror attacks on our armed forces are still taking place, even though our cities are largely safe. Some provinces are still vulnerable. Sir, I'll ask for your comments first, Rana Saab. We've seen that there's a huge reduction in terrorist attacks. Pakistan is now being seen as a safer country, safer than before, and relatively safe, I would say. However, there's still some regions which are vulnerable, and we're seeing attacks on our security forces as well.
Thank you very much. I think it's actually a very sad day, and our heartfelt condolences for the families, those who are soldiers martyred today. We have to look actually into a very wide canvas. Pakistan, as you said in your intro, has achieved remarkably, made strategic gains in terms of countering terrorism, and in a real sense, practically, we have implemented one of the most serious counter-terror campaign in the modern asymmetrical warfare. The issue here is that, as we know, that since the Taliban's negotiation process is underway, and Pakistan has contributed in the Doha process as well, there are forces within Afghanistan, especially sponsored by India, which is actually has proven largely simply because of the evidence exists on the ground, that whenever there is a lull period, and when we see that the Pakistan has been successful, India basically ignites or activates its entities within Afghanistan, and they attacks whatever we get in North Waziristan or adjacent border with Afghanistan, we mostly getting from there. Although we are working very hard to, as you know, to fence the entire area, and which we are in the process. But I would say that these, unusual incident, I would call them, because we have managed to stabilize. There have been incidents in Balochistan, in Quetta, and attacks on the mosque and others, in which it shows the desperation of the terrorist entities. But it also shows that India, and again using Afghan territory, try to basically retaliate and respond what India is facing at home.
Right, and to try and destabilize
To try to
Pakistan yet
destabilize
again, and especially when Pakistan's gaining a lot of importance in the world over different
yes,
issues with
and
Prime
on
Minister Imran Khan's
internationally,
efforts.
this current
Right.
government has gained a tremendous reputation, both in terms of its policies towards the foreign policies, but also defense policies.
Right, and at this point, I would also like to include Mr. Khurram Iqbal also, who is with us online. He's an analyst, and basically, sir, you know, we are very grateful to our armed forces and Havaldar Sher Zaman and Sepoy Mohammed Jawad, who've lost their lives, who were martyred in a terrorist attack. I mean, we know that our armed forces are always risking their lives and giving a lot of sacrifices to keep our country safe. However, this most recent attack shows that there are still places and there are still terrorist sleeper cells and terror organizations that still exist. You cannot eliminate it entirely, sir. Is that right? And how do we ensure that these are minimized?
Sharmeen, the scale and intensity of terrorism in Pakistan has gone down significantly. For last 5 consecutive years, Pakistan has witnessed a visible decline in the acts of terrorism. It is something which is duly acknowledged by the world community and mainly contributed by the armed forces of Pakistan. It was not certainly an easy task to clear the tribal region from the presence of the world's most lethal terrorist organization. But we have seen that our armed forces have done an impossible job. But we must acknowledge that pockets of conflict, pockets of resistance from terrorist organizations still persist. That is why we as a nation are not indulging in counterterrorism triumphalism. As a state, Pakistan recognizes that we have achieved a lot against terrorism, but we are still have to do a lot against terrorism. That's why Pakistan is still working to stabilize the tribal region, either by maintaining its troops there or fencing its border with Afghanistan. Now, one thing which we need to understand is that the threat of terrorism in Pakistan now emanates from the neighboring Afghanistan, where terrorist organizations enjoy the patronage of intelligence agencies hostile to Pakistan, to be more precise, research and analysis wing of India. So what Pakistan can do to pacify those cross-border terrorist sanctuaries? We have given diplomacy a chance. We have tried to engage Afghanistan to deal with Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan safe sanctuaries inside Afghanistan. Afghan authorities did conduct some of the operations which were quite effective, but of lately we have seen that Afghan authorities are not cooperating with Pakistan in terms of clearing those terrorist sanctuaries. So I think Pakistan would have to think out of box now to eliminate those terrorists operating from Afghanistan. There are a number of options available, and I would agree with Rana Athar that it is directly linked to the peace process with Afghan Taliban. If Afghan Taliban are able to have a say in Afghanistan, they will certainly not allow Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan to operate from Afghanistan. This is what India knows. That is why India is trying its best to scuttle the ongoing peace process between Afghan Taliban and United States of America.
Right. Rana Athar, your comments on this, that there's still a lot of work to be done, and Khurram Saab is saying that we need to think out of the box. Your remarks on this?
I think, to be honest, we are already thinking out of box. You know, Khurram understands this very well because he's in this area, that it is such a complex relationship between the hostile intelligence agency, the Indians and other agencies within Afghanistan, which are basically contemplating on to mount attacks against Pakistan in order to get a response and retaliation. If we start retaliating these kind of things, what will happen exactly what they desire for? They will get a conflict between Pakistan and Afghanistan. That's what India seeks, because if we go to that route, it will basically scuttle, as we say, the peace process, but it also will diminish the Pakistan, that very exclusive reputation in which Pakistan has shown great strategic patience in order to give peace a chance, we will continue to deliver this kind of understanding to United States and the world community. But at the same time, this is also important that as the Foreign Office and our security services, I would also acknowledge here that our tribesmen and our people living in that area has also given tremendous sacrifices because they were misplaced, dislocated from their homes.
And the military operations
and
that
the
took
military
place
during
there.
all this military operation, and they cooperated. They have suffered and spent so many winters, but thanks to the government as well that they managed to rehabilitate them properly and brought them back to their homes. The idea is that for us to counter this kind of, again, restarting of any campaign during this period, when on the one hand we have India's belligerence in Kashmir and in mainland India against Muslims, on the other, the United States has shown great respect and trust in our efforts. So we have to really we should give a very measured and calculated response. So we should not let India take away our patience. So we have to really still engage Afghan government and convince them that they should play their role on their side of the border and also apprehend and neutralize all those TTP's remnants, and including their mentors. As we all know that the RAW has a very extensive and elaborated mentorship program within the region. And it has said many times, but it's not rhetoric anymore, because the reality is that since the Kulbhushan Yadav and all those episodes and their open statements of their Chief of Army Staff of Indian Defense Chief very recently and Prime Minister of India, it shows that they are really hungry to have a conflict with Pakistan. Pakistan has to play very smart, as Pakistan has done
and
all
not
these years.
allow them to succeed
Not
in
allow
that,
them
right.
to succeed, because our diplomatic efforts has brought international community at least on a page in which they now respect Pakistan's efforts and positively supporting our other international activities. And this is why I'm saying it, that they are creating catch-22. This is the construction
Right.
of another asymmetrical warfare, which is a part of, I can't call it fifth
right.
generation, it's more than fifth. It's beyond, because they want to create a situation in which they create battlefields, small battlefield to Pakistan. So they keep engaging Afghan forces and cross-border firing, retaliation, which we have to respond sometime in order to make sure that the enemy should not take us for granted. But as I
Right.
said, the diplomacy and coerciveness which India is showing through Afghanistan has to be neutralized. We have to be careful on that.
Right, absolutely. Now, Khurram Sahib, I'd like to ask you this now. With Pakistan facilitating the US with its peace deal with the Taliban in Afghanistan, how can we ask them to be partners sort of in helping out in our terrorism problem? Because Pakistan has traditionally been labeled by India that the terror organizations here, etc. But whereas Pakistan is a victim of terrorism, as we've seen. So as far as border fencing is concerned and repatriation of Afghan refugees, etc., how can the United States, and while we're partners with them in their peace deal in Afghanistan, how can they also kind of be partners of Pakistan and helping out with the terrorism that we face? And already the BLA has been labeled an outlawed organization. What more can be done?
Well, Sharmeen, I think there was a lot of convergence between Pakistan and United States of America on the issue of countering terrorism. We have seen both countries cooperating with each other starting from 2001. Number of joint operations launched by Pakistan and the American agencies have eliminated more than 1/3 of Al-Qaeda leadership in the country. So there was a lot of convergence until President Donald Trump came to office. That was the time when there was an abrupt end to the US-led international campaign against terrorism. But thank God that Donald Trump has realized that there is no abrupt ending to a campaign that spans the entire world. Therefore, we have seen an emphasis by the Trump administration to pacify Afghanistan, to deliver peace and prosperity there through engaging Afghan Taliban. I think that is the first strategic point of convergence between the US and Pakistan, because Pakistan, on its part, for a long time has advocated that peace in Afghanistan can never come through the barrel of gun. Rather, it is only possible through dialogue. But US, on its part, was refusing to have a negotiation or dialogue with Afghan Taliban. President George W. Bush Jr. is on record saying in 2001 that the Americans do not talk to the terrorists. Then, under the Obama administration, we have seen that the rhetoric was toned down, and the American administration showed little bit of receptiveness to talk with the Afghan Taliban. But under the Trump administration, I think they have taken a very bold step by paving the way to have rounds of negotiations with Afghan Taliban, which I would say would certainly deliver peace in the country. Secondly, what the Americans can do to help Pakistan to deal with terrorism is, of course, acknowledgement of the great sacrifices that the armed forces of Pakistan have made during last 18 years or so. Similarly, the citizens of Pakistan, they have paid a huge price in combating the threat of terrorism, which was not only threatening the lives and finances of Pakistanis, but the groups operating from those regions, they had international plans as well. So Pakistani as a nation and a state have fought bravely against terrorism, and if the world acknowledges, that would certainly boost Pakistan's confidence. As far as tactical cooperation is concerned, we have seen United States of America has utilized its bases in Afghanistan to eliminate the top leadership of Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan in Afghanistan through effective drone strikes. Fazlullah, who was killed in a drone strike by the United States of America. Similarly, number of high-profile commanders of Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan have been apprehended by CIA and the American armies and handed over to Pakistan. So this is what Pakistan would require from the United States of America to deal with the domestic threat of terrorism. Fourthly, I would say that the US must extend its diplomatic support to Pakistan when Pakistan fences its border with Afghanistan. It's a long porous border, which is of course not manageable, but Pakistan has devoted huge amount of financial resources to fence that border. That could certainly contribute in containing not only transnational terrorism, but transnational crimes as well. So this is the set of things which United States may consider, doing with Pakistan that would boost not only the cooperation between the two countries, but also it will help to deal with the transnational threat of terrorism.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Khurram Iqbal Sahab, for joining us online. And Rana Sahab, now I'd just like to have a final comment from you about militancy in Pakistan, whatever is left of it. How does one alter the militant mindset in the people who get involved in militancy? How do we bring them out of that and bring them into being part of the mainstream of being Pakistani citizens?
I think to be honest, it's a very difficult task in terms of the implementation of the National Action Plan, the remaining part of it, the residual. And that relates to the first part of counter-violent extremism, that those who become terrorists, you have to implement. The rehabilitation, I would say, has really many phases. The first phase is definitely to de-link them with the militant organization. And then, of course, in case there are many cases in Pakistan that the terrorists were rehabilitated through institutional and psychological counseling, and giving them the skilled jobs and engaging them practically. But the problem is that this really needs a very much socio-anthropological approach to get them back into the society. It will not work to use harsh measures. If a terrorist has committed a crime, she has to go through proper law process of the police and court proceedings. But if really we want to rehabilitate those who have committed and serve their sentence, yes, you can bring them back. But the problem is, if you reward them with any program which they have committed crime, the big crimes, then it is not possible, because it will not be justice with those victims. Well, yes, if those who are extremist and have intentions to commit crimes which are very much easy to scramble through different counter-violent extremism programs and the de-radicalization programs, yes, then you give them the chance, because as part of the larger society, it is also responsibility of the state and civil society organizations to engage them positively, because definitely they must have brainwashed or they've been living in a very religiously contaminated, I would say, harsh kind of programs in which they, by default, they train them or brainwash them. This has to be done, as I said, in different levels,
So
and
a lot
it
of
is
attention
possible.
needs to be
It is
given there.
possible
And to
because
those families and their children
yes,
who are psychologically affected.
yeah, because there are 3-4
yeah.
programs in Saudi Arabia. They have a program, and then Atadal, and then you have in Malaysia they have a program. NATO runs its own center. United States have their own center in their Center for Excellences. They have these programs which really have served, because they have multi kind of terrorists they apprehended and they try to rehabilitate them.
Right.
We can do it. The only requirement is that Pakistan must engage at all levels with the, involving the psychologists and sociologists, anthropologists in their team,
Yeah,
which
to engage
are
these
which
people,
are dealing
right, to
with
further
those.
prevent
Yes,
these
which are dealing with
actions from these incidents from happening.
Right,
Thank you so
right.
much, Rana Saab, for joining us on our program again. And we are going to now go on to our next topic, which is Pakistan has rejected, the Foreign Office has rejected Prime Minister Modi's belligerent rhetoric, which says that Indian forces can come into Pakistan within 10 days and make Pakistan bite the dust, which is a very aggressive statement. Let's have a look at this report.
As Modi's ruling Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party faces increasing domestic and international pressure regarding its unilateral decisions to scrap autonomous status of Kashmir, in ongoing protest against a new citizenship law, Modi came up with another statement to divert attention from real issues. While addressing the military officers in New Delhi, Modi was quoted saying that his military could inflict a defeat on the neighboring country within 10 days. While criticizing the remarks, Pakistani Foreign Ministry statement said Modi's irresponsible and was mongering remarks reflected India's incurable obsession with Pakistan and an attempt to divert attention from growing internal challenges facing the Indian leadership. Pakistan urged the international community to take cognizance of Indian leadership's continuing belligerent rhetoric and aggressive measures, which pose a threat to regional peace and security. Tensions between India and Pakistan remain high over the Kashmir territorial dispute, which brought the two nuclear-armed nations close to a fourth war. Modi, after gaining a resounding victory in the recent elections, mainly on the basis of anti-Pakistan narratives, has been flexing its muscles across the border. He calls for a military solution to all the problems with Pakistan, but it is so unfortunate that he is not aware of the consequences of military confrontation. Modi's jingoistic attitude and misadventures against Pakistan may put the South Asian region at risk of war. India needs to behave in a rational manner, as the use of military power has never been a successful option in resolving outstanding issues. Modi must reciprocate to Imran Khan's peace offers if he really wants to do away with all the problems.
So we've seen that Prime Minister Modi's belligerent rhetoric, we've seen this in the past with the military chiefs of India as well, and now we're seeing that this continues, and this was also part of Prime Minister Modi's election campaign, which got him into power. So it seems that his government continues on this line, the anti-Pakistan rhetoric. We're going to discuss this now with our guest in the studio. Rana Athar Javed is still with us in the studio, and we also have with us online Raja Kesar, who's an international affairs expert. Thank you so much, Raja Saab, for joining us.
Well, my pleasure.
Right. So, Raj Saab, I'll begin with you. Now we're seeing this rhetoric from Prime Minister Modi that Indian army can make Pakistan bite the dust in less than 10 days. We've seen similar remarks from their army chiefs before that if the parliament decides and the Indian army is ready to come and take over Azad Kashmir, and it goes on and on and on. So, sir, what would you say to these statements? Naturally, they're not realistic because we saw what happened last year in February when the Indian forces did try and attack within Pakistan. Their plane was shot down and a pilot of theirs was captured.
Well, thank you, Sharmi. There are two things which are very important regarding this statement. One is the contextual background of this statement, and second are the operational underpinnings. Is Indian Army capable of inflicting a defeat in 10 days? This is a real-time question. Now let's come to the first point, as I said, the contextual background. Modi is facing a lot of onslaught and something which is very unprecedented and something which was unfathomable to their calculus when they were about to revert this up to amend the Citizenship Amendment Bill. They did it while not considering this kind of pressure which they are receiving right now. So this is an attempted distraction from what is happening right now in India. India is right now experiencing an internal implosion and which is ubiquitous not just in Uttar Pradesh but in Assam, in Nagaland, in Kashmir, and into all other these seven sister states in India. So, given these circumstances, it becomes a very plausible kind of a thing because Pakistan itself into their domestic landscape and they had always been cultivating Pakistan hatred into their domestic polity. So, Modi, rather than addressing the real-time issue and the real-time challenge which he is facing on ground, is rather going and flinging on with a rhetoric and is trying to distract the attention of its masses from the domestic chaos and the royal rumpus which he and Amit Shah they have initiated.
Right,
Now
exactly.
coming to the second
Sure.
aspect of this thing, is this thing operationally possible? Is Indian Army capable of inflicting a defeat on Pakistan in 10 days? The simple and the most convenient answer is no. It is operationally not possible. They have tried to mobilize their troops after 2001 when attack took place on Indian Parliament. They tried to make swift mobilization of their troops and it took them nearly a month to do that. So this is something which is operationally even not possible. It is just a mere rhetoric and it is just directed to the domestic audience of India. And it is just, Modi has gone bonkers. Reason being that his entire planning and what he conjectured for India is right now not working for him. It is right now in utmost despair and desolation for the Modi and his co-workers, which they had thought. They decided to make a Hindu Rashtra. They decided to have a new political reality in India, which they have failed to institute and which they have failed to institutionalize. So these statements and these kind of mere rhetoric, they are for nothing but just to distract the opinion and to distract the attention of the common Indian man.
Right. So, Rana Athar Saab, now I'd like to ask you this sort of a statement coming from a leader of a nuclear armed nation, is it a responsible statement?
No, I think, of course, it's very responsible. But then we have to also look into the history of Prime Minister Modi and his membership to RSS, his affiliation association, how his ideology is weaponized by militancy and how he contributed to the violence in Gujarat. So he has a history. This is one. Secondly, at the moment, India is passing through one of the most difficult period of its history. It's all India's doing. India's economy has gone down. Its international reputation is dented because of its discriminatory laws passed through this, call it, Citizenship Act. But at the same time, there are big issues, bigger than this one, that in the past almost, I think, 12 years, more than 80 journalists have been killed or maimed by. So at all levels, if we see, India has gone actually from so-called incredible India to not so incredible India. It has rather lost, which should be more interesting to analyze, its international stature, which India was thinking after the second round, because Modi failed first to give the economic relief to the Indians, and then it also failed to maintain the secular so-called democracy of India by practically taking initiative on August 5, 2019, by applying 370, Article 370 on Kashmiris. So if we look around basically comprehensively, India is at the moment a state which would definitely give this kind of desperate statements, and it is quite possible that India would take desperate measures, which they did in February last year. At the same time, they of course had taken, if they are wise, they have taken Pakistan given them a very befitting lesson in terms of shooting down the two aircrafts, and one their helicopter went down. So these are the history, and history between Pakistan and India has been one of course, coming from aggression from India and rhetoric. But Pakistan has maintained, as I said in previously, Pakistan has tremendously maintained its patience. It did not reacted. It responded in the February, and
In a
it will,
very
and
responsible
Pakistan will again respond to it. It will not react. It is simply because our Air Force, our military, they are already battle hardened. And we have been fighting India actually by India's proxies. So Pakistan is, it's not Pakistan is ready already. Since 2001, India played in a different hands and extended different support, their extended arms of militants, all that. But at the moment, as I said, internationally, if you look into the international media, from Washington Post to The Guardian, and from the very current Economist, special edition, this will show.
It's all about Prime
It's
Minister
all
Modi
about Prime
and what's
Minister
happening
Modi.
in
It's
India
about
and
MAD basically, Modi, Amit, and Doval.
Right.
So these are the things which we must understand. But at the same time, as he said, that Pakistan must maintain its patience and maturity, and rhetoric should be responded in a proper statements like our Foreign Office has done it.
Right, Raja Kesar. Now, Rana Saab was just talking about how the Prime Minister Modi's background in the RSS and how that contributes to the aggression, and his party as well, their background in the RSS. However, you also see the Indian military, you see the, being as aggressive, you're seeing within India, their police, etc., their bureaucracy is aggressive with the Muslims there, and then you're also seeing all the state institutions, their Supreme Court is not exactly giving any respite to people whose rights are being violated over there. So it seems like all the institutions together in India have sort of converged on this extremist mindset.
You're very right, Sharmeen. In the first term of Prime Minister Modi, he has cultivated a soft Hindutva, where he has created a legitimacy for Hindu ethos. He has created a wave of Hindu nationalism, which is now sweeping across the entire Indian polity. Be it film stars, filmmakers, these Supreme Court judges, uh, bureaucracy, military men, all have been deeply politicized in that first wave of Hindutva. Now he has come up, Modi 2.0 is coming up with the crude phase of Hindutva, the hard phase of Hindutva, where he is going to go to change the realities of Indian constitution, Indian polity, and Indian secularism uncharacteristically. The first and the foremost thing was reversing and revoking the special status to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The second is now the revocation of, the amendment of Citizenship Amendment Bill and the institution of National Registration Counter. So that is why you are not seeing any wide condemnation of this act except from Indian left and except from the ranks of Congress, who happen to be an ideologue and who oppose him on political and ideological fronts as well. So
Right.
now it is something which is rather very alarming, it is something like Rana Saab was saying that it can prompt India to go for any misadventure. We should not take Indian nefarious designs very lightly. They can take us by surprise again. Indeed, our security forces, they are operationally prepared. They have given India a jaw-breaking and befitting response every time when India tried to make an incursion. And 27th of February was the living manifestation of that preparedness. So rest assured that if Modi would try to go for any kind of misadventure, he would be meeting and he would be getting a very ferocious response from our side. That's for sure. But the fact of the matter is that the way we should be capitalizing on the changing realities of India at diplomatic front. You see, India is getting taken to cleaners by all international media outlets, be it American media outlets, CNN, Guardian, BBC, all are taking India to cleaners. EU Parliament has recently passed a resolution against what is happening in Kashmir. I think we should be more proactive diplomatically rather than just being bogged into our domestic mess, because this is a window of opportunity at our part to brand, India as a violent proto-fascist nation, and where the minorities are marginalized, and that is how we can actually shatter that image of incredible shining India and all that civilizational construct which India had cultivated over the years. But unfortunately, our attitude or our response towards these unfolding is below par. It is something I think which we can measure up and which we can take on up with, proactively, and we can take it up with the rest of the world. And that is how, this is what, imagine these things would have been going on in Pakistan, how India would have been doing it. They would have had assured a media onslaught, rhetoric at large against Pakistan and, creating a lot of hubbub in the entire world. But we are not reciprocating in that manner. So, and the lockdown is now entering into 180th day. It is something which is very upsetting, which is very depressing. It is, and at the same time, the plight of the minorities in India, Muslims in India, and the way India is coming up with these kind of belligerent, rather bellicose statements, I think we should be rather taking diplomatic community on board, and we should be rather taking on to the all important capitals of the world on board to tell them and to make them cognizant of what is happening in India right now.
Right, absolutely. So a lot more can be done. Thank you so much, Raja Kesar, for joining us online. And final comments from you, Rana Saab. In your opinion now, in order to engage the international community more, and what more do you think the international community can be doing vis-a-vis what's happening in India right now, and particularly with Kashmir and this aggression towards Pakistan? It's becoming a kind of heated situation. So in your opinion, what can be done?
Yeah, I think first of all, Pakistan has done a tremendous job. We should not undermine that Foreign Office job, the current government's. We travel all the time to different capitals of the world. Only 26th January, there was a huge demonstration protest in all big capitals of the world. Pakistan has approached diplomatically to all the main countries. And there is an understanding between in European countries, in European Parliament, in the British Parliament, and also in the United States government, that India has created a situation which can actually also undermine their project, peace project in Afghanistan, if there ought to be any conflict between Pakistan and India because of this. And I think Pakistan has very proactively basically pleaded its case. The Prime Minister has done so in United Nations, also in Geneva very recently. At Davos, our case has gotten attention, and I think there is always a room to do more, which Pakistan is doing diplomatically.
The
diaspora is very active. The Indian diaspora, the Kashmiri diaspora, Indian diaspora, including the film star, the civil society organization, and leader from the Congress, they all are accusing India. This is the biggest success you have.
Absolutely.
This
India
is the biggest.
Divided right
India
now
is divided, and there is an opinion in favor of Kashmiri. There is an opinion against the Citizenship Act. So we should look at the idea that 1 year ago, Pakistan's situation against India was different.
And now it's
And now it's quite different. As I said, the international press is sheer evidence of how much Pakistan has contributed diplomatically, you know, because the reason is that diplomacy takes time, and especially when an international community looks India as a market. So we
Yeah.
are against
And we're seeing a lot
we
of
are against
statements
the
from
odds.
international leaders as
Yes,
well.
and they are actually challenging and causing more unrest and resentment in international monetary organization as well.
Okay.
Because they consider that if this is the way India is going from, you know, 6.7 to 4.3 or going down in the, you know, in their GDP rate, there is a possibility that the large investment would not come to India. So this is the
Right.
biggest success of Pakistan's diplomacy
Right.
and the Foreign Office and the current government.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rana Athar Javed, for joining us on our program. And now, another sad news, 2 polio workers have been killed on Wednesday in Soabi after they were attacked. And one of them was a lady health worker also. Now, the attacks on polio workers are common in KPK and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well as in Balochistan. These are the areas which are one of the biggest obstacles of towards eradicating polio in Pakistan. And the reason that this is so important that these campaigns continue is that already in 2024 new cases of polio have been detected, and also in 2019 there were 139 cases of polio, which went up from 2018 where there were only 12 cases of polio. So the rate of polio cases has gone up. So in order to combat that and to finish out the disease in Pakistan, Pakistan is one of only 3 countries that still has polio. A lot of work has to be done, and the National Strategic Advisory Group was formed last year in order to combat this. And also another very positive story that we have today. We like to end our program with positive stories whenever we can. That a young man called Arab Shah, who's a rickshaw driver in Peshawar, he provides a free rickshaw service for young girls in his area, nearby locations who are going to school and madrasas. He provides them a pick and drop service for free to their schools, etc. So this is a very wonderful and heroic service he's providing, because as we know in KPK the rate of girls' education is relatively less than the rest of the country, and to encourage that, and from somebody who's from from a less of a socio-economic background, to even think of this and go ahead and provide a free service in his rickshaw is really a wonderful service that he's providing for the country. So we thank Mr. Arab Shah for what he's doing. So that's all the time we have for today's program. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsroom, and we'll see you next time.